Praise Yahweh, men of Yahweh. You may be seated. We're going to be picking up on page 538. Okay, in the 17th book of Yisrayl, the greatest gathering. And it's chapter 46. And the heading is, in this generation, the world will melt with fervent heat. There is a way out. Okay, in this generation, the world will melt with fervent heat, but there is a way out. And we are learning of that way out. Okay, we are here at the House of Yahweh, the pillar and the ground of the truth, but simply being in the close proximity to the House of Yahweh, or even sitting in the House of Yahweh, doesn't mean that we automatically get the protection. Okay? It's very important and very imperative for us to understand that true obedience, true humility, true submission to the laws of Yahweh, to the teachings of the great witness, Yisrayl Hawkins, whom Yahweh prophesied of, that would bring forth this work. And he showed plainly that that man's generation will not pass away before all of these things are fulfilled. So we have some awesome things to look forward to. But there's various points that we have to be mindful of, okay? You remember in Yahweh's kingdom, there are many mansions, there are many positions. There are positions of gold and silver, and necessary positions of clay and wood. And so it's up to you and I to do our best to obtain the position that Yahweh wants to give us. And that means, again, withstanding the adversary, okay? Because we know the scripture shows us that if we resist, the adversary shall flee. And this is a power that Yahweh has given unto us, given unto you and I. And that resistance is not opposition, okay? It's not challenging. It's not challenging the adversary, because, even the Malachim dare not do such things, right? But making ourselves ready, putting ourselves in a position to be made into the image and likeness of Yahweh, that when Yahshua Messiah comes, that we will be just like him. Okay? So for us, there's various things that we have to do in order to be prepared, in order to have this way out, right? To be saved from the hour of temptation, right? These are the things that we have to do in order to prepare ourselves and get ready. We have to be first and foremost mindful of ourselves. Pay attention to yourself and to the doctrine. Okay? Paying attention to ourselves and to the doctrine. First and foremost, being thankful to Father Yahweh in all of our actions and all of our deeds, knowing that the trials of our faith bring forth endurance, and being willing to serve our brothers. Okay? But servitude is actually, servitude comes from Yahweh's Spirit, which is holy. The desire, the intent to serve comes from Yahweh's Spirit, which is holy. You remember when Yahshua Messiah said to the disciples that, look, it's to your benefit that I go, because when I go, the plan of Yahweh can move forward, and you will be comforted by Yahweh's Spirit, which is holy. Okay, now understanding that Yahweh's Spirit is fed through his law, through the performing of Yahweh's law, and the understanding of the prophecies. Okay, to the laws and to the prophets, if they speak not according to these things, then there's no light within them. Also, to the writings of the prophets and the apostles, which Pastor showed us is the foundation. These are the ways These are the way out for us. Okay, being in a nutshell. That doesn't make it easy. Even though it's a nutshell, doesn't mean it's an easy nut to crack. Okay? We have to strive, okay, to work out our own salvation, work out our place within the salvation of Yahweh. Okay, and that's the way out. That's the way to be saved from the hour of temptation, the hour of great calamity, the day of Yahweh, which is coming upon the entire world. Okay, right now, the world is crying out for a Savior. They don't know it. They're groans. They don't even know the proper interpretation of it. But we in the house of Yahweh know what they're looking for. We have the opportunity to be fully aware of what they're looking for. But it's up to you and I to put this information in our minds that we can effectively guide and direct Yahweh's people when they come to his house. Okay, and also being a righteous example, an example of the true equity that comes from the keeping of Yahweh's law. Okay, so Pastor, of course, he greets all of his sons and daughters in Yahweh. Verse 2, it says, the wars are breaking out. Yahweh is showing his house exactly what we're doing and what we have done. Do you see how he's keeping track of that with gematria? I hope you understand that. It's really fascinating. It says it backs up the prophecies. I don't see how there could be any doubt about the house of Yahweh. I mean, this is it. Okay, so the house of Yahweh is, even when you look into the gematria and bring to mind all the things that have been brought out concerning the gematria, and if you understand how the gematria operates, then you'll know that Yahweh has his hand in identifying to you and I and establishing in our minds that this is truly the house of Yahweh. This is truly the work of Yahweh. Okay, now, of course, we believe without seeing, but now we're able to see through gematria the things that we believed previously, and it gives us even more ammunition in this spiritual warfare that we're enduring right now at this particular time. Part of that spiritual warfare is getting the names of the gods out of our mouths, right? So Pastor says here, the word is getting out. We got the word out about Christmas before Christmas. If you notice, if you're on the Twitter list, I guess they call it. I know nothing about computing. He's a Okie. Okay, he knows nothing about what the social media is doing and all of these different things. And of course, we have to be very, very careful when we're dealing with social media, because that social media is also, it's like the ark. It's like Noah's ark. Okay, it has both the clean and the unclean in it. And it has the teachings of the mixture of righteousness and evil, and it has the teachings of righteousness in it. So we have to be able to properly guard our minds in order to protect ourselves from the wiles of the adversary. Okay, so Pastor continues, he says, I make suggestions when I hear about things we can reach out on. We started sending text messages and Twitter messages yesterday. What's coming up in the prophecy is even more exciting. It gets more exciting. It really does. I always go to tell you, a pastor says, I was going to tell you that the men didn't want to speak today, so I had to, so I had to, but I thought y'all wouldn't believe that anyway. Of course, we know that the pastor is always ready to speak. Verse 5 shows about the names of the gods. It says, this month of December, with the god December, the 25th is his birthday. He's quite a god. You know, December 25th is a very powerful God. I mean, that day of God worship is the only day that can actually shut down Walmart for a whole day. That's a powerful God. A God that can actually shut down Walmart. December 25th, that worship of Jesus Krishna. Right, let's go down to verse 6. It says, we brought out the truth about Christmas, and that article is going really fast. It's up to 68,570 news medias and millions on the other news releases that we have. Watch for things occurring with China. Okay, and Pastor went forward to say that China is intending to be, if you know anything about what China is doing today, China is positioning itself to become, its desire is to become the world power. Okay, now, it still has a long way to go, because if you remember, the United States of America has over 800 different military installments around the world, in different areas of the world. Okay, so the United States is the world power, the chief of every single nation, because there are no other world powers, even in the nuclear realm, who have the power and are as far widespread as the United States of America. Over 800 army bases throughout the world. Okay, now, if you and I didn't look for this information, if it wasn't brought to us in the news when we see the news on the Sabbath mornings, we wouldn't know that, and the general public isn't mindful that the United States really has over 800 military installations throughout the world, which is a staggering number, and verifies it even more that this is the chief of all the nations. But China is trying to make their move, and they even want to get in on the quartet. But Pastor said at the end of verse 7, he says, they could join in, in other words, they could help out a little bit, but there won't be a fifth member of that group, the quartet. It says that quartet is shown in prophecy, so we know that China won't be able to join. But China is wanting to also flex its muscles and show its capability. Right? There's specific things that get nations to be able to be in the global conversation. And one of the main, if not the main factor, is nuclear technology. And that's why you have so many other nations that are fighting to be able to gain this nuclear technology, because once you have the nuclear technology, once you have the ability to burn, to cause the firmament to melt with fervent heat, or cause the elements to melt with fervent heat, you're at the table. Okay? You're at the table. In Africa, South Africa used to have nuclear technology. But as soon as democracy came into South Africa, and they knew that the original power, or the original system, or the system that had taken South Africa was about to crumble, meaning the Dutch and the Germans wouldn't have power in South Africa anymore, they dismantled the first thing they did was dismantle the nuclear facility there, because they knew that if South Africa then went into democracy and the so-called majority rules, that South Africa would maintain a seat at the global table. Now, we do know also that China, you remember the BRICS, right? The economic system that's challenging the United States, or the petrodollar. South Africa is one of those members, along with China, Russia, and a few others. I can't remember exactly who. Brazil, I believe, is one of. India, right? Okay. So these are the powers that are contending against each other. Remember, Satan's kingdom is divided, and a kingdom divided against itself will not stand, right? So China is trying to make its move in that arena. So here in verse 8, Pastor writes, he says, I want to get the full scope of this theater in your mind. Okay, so what's being played out? He wants us to understand the full scope of it by him mentioning about China. You know, he knows that China is not going to be able to join or be part of the quartet, although they could join in on the actions, but they won't be, part of the quartet, because the prophecy doesn't show that there will be a fifth member. Okay, but he wants us to be aware of these things. He wants us to be aware of what's going on in the condition of the world right now, because these are the things that prophecy hinges on. The condition of the world, and also the condition of Yahweh's house. Okay, those are the two biggest things that prophecy hinges on. Let's go to verse 9. It says, the subconscious mind can hold more information than any computer, which they admit. I brought this out in the Mark of the Beast, I do believe. They have these giant computers that the world uses to build nuclear bombs, drive their cars, drive their planes and trains, and slow them down at curves suddenly. Okay, this technology is growing. There's more and more interaction between the internet and individuals' lives today. When he spoke about that computer in the Mark of the Beast, the technology right now, that the huge complexes, you can imagine, you could carry a very powerful computer with you on your wrist. The touch screen watches and such, that's a very, very powerful computer. Back in the days, you would need like a whole room this size to be able to have what you now have on your wrist, right? But they've built humongous complexes of that same technology that you have on your wrist, multiplied over and over and over and over again, with the purpose of keeping all of remember the scripture says that they have eyes, right? This beast, this horn had eyes watching, right? So they want to keep tabs on everybody, so they have very, very, very powerful, much more. When Pastor wrote about it in the Mark of the Beast, and he was able to see and recognize, yes, this computer is something that the beastly system is going to use in order to gain control of the people. We're seeing it today. Okay, we're seeing they have everyone pegged. They have everyone pegged. If you look at when people get commit a crime and they get caught and they have to go to court, they'll pull up text messages from 10 years ago that you text on your phone, text messages from 10 years ago. They'll pull up surveillance camera that saw you walking across the street and spit out gum on the ground. That's another violation to add to your, they'll start picking all kind of stuff because the eyes are all over the place. Okay? And one of the priests, I was speaking to one of the priests today, he was saying, like, truly, you and I have to really be thankful to Father Yahweh, because without Yahweh's protection, there would be nothing stopping this system from raining down on us. There would be absolutely nothing, and you will be completely helpless to fend off this beast. Totally helpless. The only one who can save us and put a ring in the snout of the Leviathan, In the nose of the Leviathan is Yahweh himself. And so that's why we cry out to our Abba Father, right? Yahweh Almighty, because we want to be in unity with him. Okay, so let's go over to verse 13. It says, we're going to pick up where she lost her power and her authority. That's Satan, where Satan lost her power and authority because she turned away from Genesis 1:26, remaining in the image and likeness of Yahweh. She had power and authority at one time. Yahweh shows she brought curses. This is what I've told the priests. One drop of rebellion will get the authority taken away from you. Okay, one drop of rebellion will get the authority taken away from all of us. Yahweh is going to know you before you get into the kingdom. If you've got rebellion, you won't make it. It just won't be allowed in Yahweh's kingdom. Rebellion and sin are what brought curses about and caused the tree of life to be taken away. The world is cut off from the tree of life. Yahshua plainly said, a tree of evil cannot bring forth righteousness. Okay? A tree of evil cannot bring forth righteousness. It's impossible for them to teach righteousness. That should be obvious. Okay? And it's desperately obvious today, because when you look at all of the worldly organizations, the worldly religions, you can see the mixture. You know, you can see the mixture, and there's a lot of compelling information that's out there. But when you look at the book of Yahweh, and when you use the book of Yahweh as the standard, you'll see that there's just plain and simple no one in the entire world, no organization in the entire world that follows even the King James Version, like the House of Yahweh follows the scriptures. Okay? Not one. Oh, what about the Jews? Well, the Jews, they don't keep it either. They keep the Talmud. Well, what about the Muslims? Well, in the Quran, they were told, if you lose your way, go back to the way of your father Abraham. That's what they were told. But because of the imams and the mullahs, their teachers, their priests, then they did not retain the knowledge of Yahweh in their minds. Okay? The ones at the top, the Muslims, the ones at the top, they know that Allah is not the name. They know it. But how do you redirect a train that's already going full blast? You know, the Muslim religion, the only way that it could be turned around from its current trajectory is Father Yahweh. That's the only way. But it's just like what Pastor showed. They don't have the understanding. So Pastor says here at the top of page 540, says you don't even have sense enough to know who the Lord is or where the word Lord came from. You remember Pastor showed that the word God was, they don't even know where it originated from. It has no real, because the term God doesn't even have it can't carry the weight of being pertaining to the creator of the universe. A God, a Lord, none of those things are meant to identify the creator of the universe, but yet Satan, who created the position of God, was able to tag that term. So now when anybody speaks of God, the world thinks that they're referring to the creator of the universe. But we know in the House of Yahweh that Yahweh is not a God at all. Now, if we understand what that means, the ramifications of that understanding, how deep it goes, okay, it goes very, 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 very deep into everyday life, okay? But that's a whole nother story. So verse 16, Pastor says, anyway, We're the last who are going to be the first to receive this authority, not only to raise the dead, but create and maintain flesh. Yahweh proved Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He proved those three. The world, the Christian teachers, who can't bring forth righteousness, are teaching the 12 tribes of Israel kept the laws of Yahweh. They're all liars, as Yahshua said in Yachanan 8 and verse 44. Okay? Christianity is teaching that the children of Israel were Yahweh's people. And they just plain and simply were not. Yahweh said, if you keep my laws, then you will be my people. He didn't say you're just my people just because you were born from Abraham. No. Although his people are drawn from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Okay? But the children of Israel never became Yahweh's people. And that's your duty today. To prove Yahweh right. To become Yahweh's people through the keeping of the law after the order of Melchizedek. Okay, after the order of Melchizedek, after the order of righteousness. Okay, let's see here. Verse 18. There's a lot more money in war. There's a lot more money in Christmas and pagan holidays than there is in the work of Yahweh. Okay, there's a lot more money because why? At this particular time, power is given over to the adversary and her mark, right? Because you remember today you can't buy or sell without the mark of the beast, and the mark of the beast is the keeping of Christmas, Easter, Valentine's Day, St. Patrick's Day, all of these things, Halloween, the reverence and the memorial to the dead, all of these things. You know, I remember when I first started keeping the Sabbath day, many of my companions would say to me, like, look, Saturday is the biggest money day. How are you going to, and that's the day you're taking off, right? So we know that there's great money in following after the beastly system. And that's how this beastly system gives unto her servants, right? But just like what Yahweh said about the adversary, that she's worse than a harlot because the harlot gets paid for her harlotry. But Satan pays those who commit harlotry with her. Okay? So this is what we're dealing with. Having the true understanding that Pastor that is bringing forth, that Yahweh is inspired to be brought forth in these last days, there is no contention. There is no organization that can contend with the House of Yahweh where it comes to fulfilling the scriptural examples. Okay, a lot of the organizations today that call themselves Israelites, some of them are keeping the new moon. You know, they believe that the new moon is actually the full moon. Some of them believe that when the Roman third month turned over to the Roman fourth month, that's the beginning of the moons to you, because the Roman third month turned to the Roman fourth month. So 14 days from the first day of the Roman fourth month, they kept their Passover. Okay? So look, the pillar and the ground of the truth. Yahweh's got you here. Remain here, because this is where we all need to be. Praise Yahweh. If you'd all stand, I'd like to turn the floor over to the great Kahan, Zephaniah Heimerman Hawkins. Praise Yahweh.
Shalom, great men of Yahweh. You may be seated. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. Exciting times we live in. We're going to pick up on page 544. If you do have your books, page 544. And as you're turning there, I'm going to reread the title of this sermon that we're covering. It was from 12/23/2017. It's the last chapter here in the 17th book of Israel. And the title is, In This Generation, the World Will Melt with Fervent Heat. There is a way out. So on page 544, if you turn there, we're going to pick up on verse 47. And this is, Pastor's reading from 2 Kepha, chapter 3. And for pretty much the remainder of this sermon, he reads from the book of 2 Kepha, both chapter 3 and chapter 2. But this particular verse here is in 2 Kepha, chapter 3, verse 10. So verse 47 says, But the day of Yahweh will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens will pass away with great noise. Now, remember Yeshua's words, as he describes, as the apostle here describes this as a thief in the night, the day of Yahweh is going to come. Well, that's the way it's going to come upon the world, not upon us in the house of Yahweh. Remember, Yeshua pointed out, he said, we should be able to discern both the times and the seasons. And he used many examples and said, when you see these things, know that the time is very near. It's near at hand. And he used, several different analogies, if you would, to make that point. So it's going to come upon the world as a thief in the night. It's going to come unexpectedly to them, but not to us. We can see the way the world is going. We see the nations are angry. We see this buildup that continues to go to this way of nuclear war. So continuing here in verse 47, great noise, and the elements will melt with fervent heat. And, some of the words here that are used, the fervent, and in another scripture we'll see dissolved in verse 11. It's only used to describe this war that's coming here, this nuclear war, this fervent. It's extreme, it's intense, it's just like nothing ever experienced. And, looking at metals or considering metals and steel and carbon and stainless and so forth, they all have different melting points. Some of them melt at hundreds of degrees. Some of them melt when they reach up into the thousands, like 5,000 or 6,000 degrees, some of the really strong ones. But this fervent heat and the heat that's generated from a nuclear explosion is like millions of degrees, millions. And, so nothing is going to withstand that type of intense heat. So this word used, fervent, that's why it's used. It's such intense heat that is going to be generated here, and that's what the apostle was getting across. And again, with some of the words that are used here, you don't see them used anywhere else in the scriptures. This is going to be some fervent heat, some extreme heat from this war. Well, we're very close to that time, brethren. We're going to see it. And remember, Yeshua said, when you see these things, that was one of the things he said, that, we're going to be able to see this direction the world is going. We're going to see the diseases, the wars, the unnatural disasters, as we're going to cover here, how the earth is cursing mankind because mankind has cursed the earth. So it can't give back to mankind the strength there that Yahweh intended for these kingdoms of microorganisms to actually give back to mankind. So we're very close to that time, brethren. We're going to see it. You're going to see it unless you die before it takes place. It's going to come really, really soon now. Pastor talks about the feeling the urgency and getting this knowledge out to the world before these nuclear bombs bring this fervent heat. Well, continuing here in verse 49, will both the earth and the works that are in it. Now, what are the works that he's talking about here? What are the works? The sin, that's right, the wickedness. Both the earth and the works that are in it will be burned up. He's talking about sin and the sinners. And, this time period right here, it's nothing, we've never had a time period like this right here where sin and sinners and the gods and the God worshipers are all going to go away. That's it. It's going to stop. And, this is where righteousness prevails, where Yahweh takes over, Well, this is where sin is going to stop. They're going to stop it. Yahweh had it all planned out to let them reject him and then show them what rejection brings. And Yahweh knew what or how mankind would turn and go after the lust of their own heart and rejecting Yahweh's laws. So he allowed mankind to go that way to show them the lesson that, hey, you can't go your own way and have it ever work. It's not going to work. And this is the lesson that he's showing mankind. Without it, come on, we know what mankind would do. They'd still be thinking, we'll figure it out. We'll get it. So Yahweh's making it to prove to mankind a point. You can't go your own way and still have peace, joy, abundant living, or any of the righteousness that Yahweh intended to give to mankind. You can't do that and reject Yahweh. So verse 50, now you, on the other hand, us, we the house of Yahweh, have a unique position here. You believed without seeing, so he doesn't have to put you to death with nuclear bombs. You believed without seeing. You believed the scriptures. And this as Pastor's talking about believing without seeing, it makes me think of the example of the Apostle Kepha. And remember this account. It's in Matthew 14 if you want to go back and read it. But Yeshua had sent the disciples away. They got on a boat. They went out into the sea, and it says that he went and he prayed. And so all night long they're being tossed about, in the sea here. The winds were strong. And right before the daybreak, now you think about that. Think about putting yourself in that position there to where you're experiencing that. So it's probably a very unrestful evening. And, so Yeshua comes walking out to them on the water. And, of course, what was their reaction? Did they know it was Yeshua? No, they didn't. They thought, they were terrified, as it says, and they thought, here's some spirit coming to us. So Kepha says, Yeshua, if it's you, well, tell me to come out to you. So Yeshua said, all right, come on out here. So Kepha steps out, and he starts walking towards Yeshua. Now, he's standing on the water. He's walking on the water out there to Yeshua. So you see that Kepha had to believe he could do that, right? I mean, he came out there, and he believed, but then what occurred? He started to doubt. He didn't believe anymore. The wind, maybe the wind picked up, or he turned around and he saw, man, the boat's way back there. How am I going to get back here if I start to sink? And, that's exactly what occurred. He started to sink, and there he went to saying, teacher, save me. And, of course, Yeshua reached out and saved him. But, that makes me think of this believing that Pastor tells us to do. There's no limit on it. You can't believe for a while and then, I don't know. I don't know about that. I haven't really seen anything. And that it makes me think of that situation with Kepha, and I'm not saying anything against Kepha. We'll actually talk about him here a little bit later on. Kepha he turned out to be an extremely strong man of Yahweh, and did many great things. But at that point there, he had that little bit of doubt. He allowed some doubt to enter into his mind. So, kind of keep that in mind. But our job is to believe without seeing, to continue to believe without seeing, and to believe the scriptures, the prophecies that we've been taught. Well, continuing, Pastor says, you believed because of the prophecies. I've expounded on these prophecies to you to show you these prophecies are 100% accurate. And that's the thing. You can't get smarter than Yahweh. You can't outdo Yahweh. His prophecies are 100% certain, and we're going to see the rest of them. At the end of this sermon, Pastor again points out the fact, look, the nuclear bombs were prophesied to be in this generation, and lo and behold, they're here. Why not believe the rest of the prophecy that says they're going to be used? You'd have to be an idiot not to believe that they're going to be used. They were created in this generation or developed in this generation. They're going to be used in this generation. So that's coming. Those prophecies are coming. Okay, let's look over to verse 54. Now this is 2 Kepha 3, verse 11. Since all these things will then be dissolved. Okay, and there's another one of those, the words here that, it's kind of like the fervent, dissolved. When you dissolve something, do you see it anymore? It's gone. It's dissolved. It might have been a solid, and then, you dissolve it. It's gone. And this is what Yahweh says is going to take place here. Since all these things will then be dissolved. They're going to be dissolved, Pastor said. That also is shown in Isaiah when he uses the word that they translated consumed. They'll be consumed. He tells you then what to do. So here you have in 2 Kepha, he's talking about the nuclear weapons and this time period of fervent heat and sin and sinners being dissolved. And then he bounces back to us, the house of Yahweh. And he said, he tells you then what to do. What manner of persons ought you to be in holy conduct and righteousness? And Pastor has answered that we should be completely righteous, completely holy. So, if you look at that, those whole couple of scriptures there show you the plan of Yahweh in, here's where the world is going to be going. Here's what they've created. This is what they're going to do. This is going to be their end here, and you're going to see this. Now, what should you be doing? Focusing on being righteous. Righteousness and holiness. Well, follow righteousness. It's not 666. Okay, and in verse 55 here, if you look at verse 55, and I want to kind of skim through it, Pastor's throwing out a word of caution there, not to get sidetracked and led astray, especially at that time of year, which remember it was December there, the descending of the gods, the 12th month, when the gods descend. And he said, they have these subliminal suggestions. If you watch the news, you can try to keep your mind guarded against it, but it's going into there. If we watch it, it's gonna get in there. He said, now you can try to keep your mind guarded against it, but it's going to get in there. The only thing that's going to outweigh that is your loyalty for Yahweh. And the word loyalty there, can you think of a better word to describe or to have it said about ourselves other than loyalty? That's what Yeshua said, well done, righteous and faithful servant. Faithful, loyal, true, standing firm. And that's what Pastor says, that's the only thing, is this loyalty for Yahweh. That's the only thing it's gonna keep us on this path. We've got to develop this loyalty for Yahweh. It means we don't bend or we only do it sometimes. It's when a person is loyal, they do it all the time. It's consistent. Well, otherwise, you're going to be wanting to go shopping and go buy presents. Okay, let's look at across the page here to verse 58. Well, Yeshua said, without the foundation, 3 out of 4 are going to fall away. And the foundation. I mean, that the main, the most important part of any building is what you build upon, the foundation. Well, they have no foundation. The foundation that the apostles laid in Jerusalem is called the second part of the book of Yahweh. If you get this thoroughly in your minds, you'll see how the apostles stood strong and were actually willing to give their lives. Kepha even said, I don't feel worthy to be hanged right side up on the stake like Yeshua. Put me upside down. That is strength. And Pastor mentioned this example in the food of the Spirit. He was talking about this and how Kepha built up this very strong, fortified, he described it as like a fortification of Spirit holy within himself to get to this point. But again, was Kepha always like this? No, he wasn't. Remember? He was the one that denied Yeshua. But, that example there makes me really stop and consider that when there's a fault, or when I don't want to say when I see a fault, but sometimes there might be something that bothers us in another brother. And, we tend to focus on that. But if you look at the positive in that individual and the potential that they have, even though, whatever this other thing is here, this maybe this little negative character trait or something that needs to be worked on or something that's a point of irritation, maybe slapping us in the face and we can't seem to get away from it, think of that positive there and the potential that's in every one of our brothers, every one of us here. And look at these examples here of how, man, these men, they stood strong, and they were strong men, when Yahweh was finished with them. So, look for that positive there, and look at this example here with Kepha, because, like Pastor said, that's some strength, and that's what they demonstrated. Let's look at verse 60. Okay, and this is verse 20. Now, this is 2 Kepha chapter 2. Chapter 2 instead of chapter 3, but verse 20. Now, if after they have escaped the pollutions of the world, and again here, you see the wisdom that's contained in the Scriptures. How did the apostle know, except through inspiration, what this world would be like? Full of pollutions, and we're not talking about the trash, or the plastic, or that that several mile long slug of plastic floating out there in the ocean. We're talking about the pollutions in this world, the things that poison that spirit holy within us if we allow that poison to come into our minds. But the apostle says here, now if after they have escaped the pollutions of the world through the knowledge of Yahweh. And Pastor says, well, you see how you escape them? How do you escape them? Through the knowledge of Yahweh. Well, keep that in mind. All the other scriptures, when you read these verses here, you can't just get it on your own. Yahweh said, go to my house where I have chosen to place my name. Well, that narrows it down some. I think it narrows it down to one, right? Well, most people mention the name Yahweh and they start suffering persecution, so they stop using the name. Now, you've got to go to the place and ask, and knowledge will be given to you. You don't do it on your own. We can't take one of these, well, aren't we all holy here? Can't we all read? I think there were a couple that tried that, right? It didn't work out for them. We need to follow in line there, listen to the one that Yahweh sent. That's the way it works. That's putting line upon line, precept upon precept, here a little and there a little. So Pastor reminds us of that here. Don't do it on your own. We can't do it on our own. Don't do whatever is pleasing in your own sight. But go to the place and there get the knowledge. Listen to the priest, as the law says. Verse 63. Now nobody has a need in the house of Yahweh that isn't met. They're taken care of fully. And here he goes into a little bit on teamwork. And we'll actually, one of the last verses here, I think the very last quote in this book of Israel on page 550 talks about this. That we're the team here that Yahweh has put together. He said, well, how do we do this? How is everyone taken care of? Well, we work together as a team at the house. We take care of everybody in the house. We work to do so. We have departments set up, and this is just like the earth. This is just like the earth is working right now for you. And that's good. That point right there on how the earth is working, that's going to connect us in another way here further on in this sermon. But if you think about this teamwork and the departments, I've always strived to try to think about the person that comes after me, and not try to make their job any more difficult than it may already be. And, in these departments, when one department does their job, it makes it easier on the next department and the next department and so forth. But when one kind of gets thrown off, well, then it might, that might kind of bleed over into the next department. It makes it a little difficult there and over into this department. And that's what we see going on in the earth as well through the actions of mankind. Because, mankind has not stayed within their department, so to speak, and through the sin, they've actually cursed the earth, which in turn now the departments there of the microorganisms can't give back to mankind what is there or was there for the strength of mankind, if I'm explaining that right. Let's read on here. Well, this is just like the earth is working right now for you. That's the way the kingdom of Yahweh is going to work, and it's going to work throughout the whole universe, bringing this way to the universe where there won't be any wars ever again. The way of sin is bringing wars, and then continuing with the scripture, and overcome by them, the latter end is worse with them than the beginning. And that is, remember, if after they escape these pollutions through the knowledge of Yahweh, then they're again entangled in them, the worse, the latter end is worse with them than the beginning. And in verse 21 of 2 Kepha 2, for it would have been better. If you think about this, man, that's think of this scripture here and what it's saying. It would have been better for them not to have ever known the way of righteousness than after they have known it to turn from those holy laws delivered to them. And then it reminds us of the proverb here. It's like the dog returning to his own vomit. Okay, well, let's look at down to verse 66. Well, Yeshua taught the truth. He taught righteousness. He worked miracles. And think of the word there, miracles, for a minute. I saw in the scriptures where everybody turned against him in Yochanan chapter 6. And remember what did Pastor say about miracles? What did he tell Yahweh about miracles? He said he didn't want them. He said, I told Yahweh I'd rather not have miraculous healings. It's my desire that you train the people to come to you who actually want to be a part of the kingdom and will believe without seeing. And if you think about the miracles, look at all those people that saw the miracles that Yeshua did. Thousands of them at a few times. And remember, what did it get down to? Just the 12. And he turned to them and said, look, are you also going to leave? So the miracles, they don't help. They may help for a little bit, but it's only temporary. It's not permanent. The permanent has to come within our own mind and heart in believing and laying that foundation and seeing these scriptures and the faith and the trust in our through our studies and so forth, that that's where our strength has to come from, this foundation that was already laid. It's not the miracles. Otherwise, and even Yeshua said, if one had been raised from the dead, you still wouldn't believe. And many of them saw that. But I can imagine later they were probably saying, I've been thinking about that. I wonder if that guy was just sleeping or something. I mean, did he really? They just reasoned it away. And that was it. Like Yeshua said, they all left. Are you also going to leave? So, Pastor said here, it's my desire that you train the people to come to you who actually want to be a part of the kingdom. You got to want it. You have to want it. And will believe without seeing. Well, verse 67. Go to Yochanan 6:67. Then Yeshua said to the 12, will you also leave? Will you think of the thousands who followed Yeshua? I know you think it's strange that people leave the house of Yahweh. Well, Yahweh tells us it's going to take place. He says only a few will remain. Remember the scripture, many are called, few chosen. Few chosen. Well, remember, Matthew 7:13 and 14, Yeshua said, straight is the way, and narrow is the path that's going to the kingdom, and only a few are going to be able to do it. Now, those few, brethren, are sitting here in this room right now and listening to our broadcast. They're you. And that should remind us of that very unique opportunity, the unique position that we have. And, think of the scriptures that tell us, he who endures until the end, the same will be saved. But we have to stay our place. We have to stand in our place. We have to continue to believe, and believe without seeing. Well, verse 68. Yeshua turned to his disciples in showing you how powerful this way of sin is and how much power Satan has to bring people and pull them away with the trickery and deception. Then they get to thinking, well, I'm not breaking any law. And Pastor says, what a mess you get into when you start thinking that way. But Yeshua pointed out to them, he was pointing out to his disciples, look, Satan is very crafty. The briars are going to come up as we see with the parable out of 3 out of 4. They're going to be the tests and the trials, and if we're not firmly grounded, we're gonna go. We're gonna split. So at the end here of verse 68, Yeshua was so impressed, and he tried to express to and warn his disciples, and he did. Now this goes for you too, and this goes for us. This is our warning also. This warning applies to us in these last days. Verse 70, for if Yahweh did not spare the Malachim, okay, if he didn't spare the Malachim, remember, those were his original sons. And look at verse 71. Pastor, he reminds us here of the tremendous job that we're going to have. In verse 71, all judgment is already given to the sons of man, or the Son of Man. That is the promise from the beginning. So what's going to take place with these original sons? You're going to decide. Be tough. Don't bend. That's a pretty tall order, but that's going to be our job. You see how important the loyalty is there, and the staying strong, believing fully in the one sent, trusting in these prophecies. That's going to be just a small portion of the jobs that we'll have. And remember what Yeshua said, if we love family more than me, then we're not worthy of him. Okay, let's look over to verse 80 here as we draw to a close. Look at verse 80. Well, believe these scriptures. Believe what Yahweh says right here. And this is what we're talking about with the micro kingdoms and the departments and so forth. Well, Genesis 4:11. So now you are cursed from the earth. Well, Yahweh doesn't curse you. He tells you to take care of the earth. Guard and keep it. Remember, that was the instruction given to mankind. Guard and keep it. But they failed, so it's going to be given to us. First, we're going to restore it, and then we will keep that instruction of guarding and keeping it once it's restored. He said, he set the earth in motion to take care of you, mankind. I just told you about the iron being in the center of the earth. Well, that's not the only thing. The earth is such a beautiful thing, the way Yahweh made it. You really need to know about it, and we'll get to it and what the scriptures show on, hopefully soon. Verse 82, we have a great work ahead of us, brethren. From the time the work started, we've done quite a bit already. If you think about how the House of Yahweh started, and I know that we've shown some of the history of the House of Yahweh and some of the, from when the House of Yahweh was in town, what we now know is the press room there, and then it came out here, and just that span alone was a huge part of the history of the House of Yahweh, and then the putting together here of the sanctuary and all the different departments that we have around here. We've done quite a bit already, Pastor says, but we haven't got it all done. The biggest part is yet to come. Now think about what you're reading right now. This book of Yahweh didn't just happen. It was brought about by long hours of labor. And, if you remember the words of Yeshua when he said, the kingdom of Yahweh, it's like a mustard seed. It's just the tiniest little thing. It's very tiny. It's very small, but it grows into the biggest tree there. And, that's what we're seeing take place, and we're a part of it. This great opportunity that Yahweh's given each and every one of us. So I think I'm going to have you turn to page 550 here. We'll close with this quote here from Pastor. On page 550, this is the last page in the book of chapter 46. He says, you're the ones who are going to stop sin from happening again. You're the team that's going to see to it. What a great opportunity we have. May Yahweh bless each and every one of you. Have a great Sabbath.